Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one absentee chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, first, Nick, is it true Stabby is not here because she's sharpening her knives?
Her nails, yeah.
Same difference.
Same thing.
Claws.
Yeah. I do not see the difference in this picture. All right. So with that out of the way, we're going to let our guests in the alphabetical order as decreed by the Oracle of All Things Word introduce themselves. Miss H.P. Hollow, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers at home?
All right, sure. Well, I write under two pen names, HP Hollow and Edie Sky. HP Hollow is my sort of clean-ish pen name, wherein I write fun fantasy adventure about idiotic monster hunters. Edie Sky is my spicier pen name, where I write fun fantasy adventure that is also really spicy. So, yeah, and you can find all my stuff on Amazon, and yeah. I feel like I've been on here so many times within the past month.
It's cool. We love it. Any truth to the HP means hit points in your pen name?
No, it does not, but I wish I had that foresight. I also get the question of whether it was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, which it was also not.
I mean, why not say yes to all the things? It could be multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we call that retconning in the business.
Yes, I like this. We're going to retcon my original pen name now. It stands for his
name. I mean, it has nothing to do with the birth name your mother gave you and everything to do with your passions.
Yes.
It's like your mother knew.
I mean, I write GameLit, so it fits.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have next the lovely Miss Jenna S. Brown. Sometimes she has other personalities too. Tell us about them.
Yes, but my personalities aren't quite as much fun as HP's are. I am Janet S. Brown. I write nonfiction and cookbooks under Janet S. Brown. Under Jenna Ray, I write urban fantasy, science fiction, fantasy, all the speculative stuff. And then I write romance under another pen name, though mine is not as spicy as Eddie's is. I'm a closed door girl. They have as good of a time as your imagination can come up with. So, but yes, I'm happy to be here. We're going to talk about games, and I love games. Now, this is a funny thing: is the name Jenna Ray comes from when I used to do online role playing with mushes, which is a very good kind of portal fantasy, pulling your characters in there. And Jenna Ray was my very favorite character, and I played her for years and years. And when I needed a good pen name, I had to grab this pen name, and that's where the pen name comes from. So it's all GameLit.
And the S means Stabby?
Absolutely.
All right, next we have Miss Melissa McShane.
Hi, I'm Melissa McShane, and while this is a pen name, it is my only pen name. I write fantasy of different varieties, contemporary fantasy, urban fantasy, and LitRPG. And I really love all kinds of games and have been gaming for a very, very long time.
Nice. And we have Mr. Nathan Petty.
Hey, so I write sci-fi fantasy, and I just realized I'm the only one here that's using my actual name.
Well, first off, Nick, name. And I don't know if mine counts as a pen name because technically J and R are my first and middle name initials, but that's also what everyone calls me. So is it a pen name if that's like saying, is Mike a pen name if your name is Michael, Rob if your name is Robert? I don't think so.
Well, I was going to use N.A. Petty, but then it just spells nap. And
that is awesome.
But that would be perfect if you started writing cozy fantasy.
I don't write cozy fantasy. I will more darker than that.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be funny for middle grade too, but way too dark for that.
I've tried middle grade and
Yeah, those kids, man, you never know. They use weird words that aren't really English that they just make up, and I got to go to Urban Dictionary. No, thank you. So, all right, and Nick, what have you been up to lately?
Rehab. Physical therapy.
Speaking of rehab, that's actually how everyone here first met. We met in rehab for our book addiction.
Yeah, but it's an addiction if you don't want to get well.
For those of you that are lactose intolerant, avoid that joke.
All right, so we're going to mix up the religion questions a little bit since you've answered almost all of them multiple times in multiple different variations. So, since the topic today, if you read the title of the episode, is GameLit, LitRPG, and all of the things, I'm going to ask you this. What is your favorite game? And we're going to start with Nick, and we're just going to go round robin.
Ooh, Halo.
Nice. Nathan?
Help if I'm unmuted. It's a Fallout 4 currently.
Fallout 4? What is that? I'm not
Fallout.
You don't know
Fallout 4.
Fallout.
I know Fallout. I have spent some hours, many hours in Fallout. All right. What about you, Melissa?
Okay, I'm going to go back a ways, and it's actually Fable 2 on the console, which is embarrassing because I'm a PC gamer, but Fable 2 on the console.
Fable was the funny one where you could do all the evil deeds and your character kept getting more evil. But then if you just go to a church and you pay an indulgence, suddenly you're pure again.
In Fable 2, you got virtue points for like not eating meat, and I just didn't want to look fat, so I ate a lot of celery, and I ended up becoming like this angel being because I was so virtuous for only eating celery, and all I really wanted was not to have a fat butt. So
I mean, it tracks for real life too.
It does.
For those of you listening instead of viewing, Nick has been staring at me in disgruntled Catholic for the joke about indulgences. So
I'm the world's worst Catholic. You know.
All right, Shannon, what is your favorite game?
Currently, I am playing a lot of Zelda with my daughter. We're playing Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild and Hyrule Warriors. And Hyrule Warriors is the only one of the three that I'm actually good at because all you have to do is run around and kill things. Because I can't do the and you're supposed to press this button and the other one all at the same time, and I get claw hand. But with Hyrule Warriors, I can play that one because all I have to do is mash the kill button, and I'm really good at that. So that's my current favorite.
Nice. You got your priorities in order.
Exactly.
All right. Heather.
All right, mine's a tie because I couldn't decide, and it's going to be whatever Pokemon game I'm playing at the time and whatever Xenoblade game I'm playing at the time because they're both relaxing in different ways, and I play video games to relax.
Good choices.
I don't know if I could decide on just one. I'm addicted to Halo. I've been playing that since I got out of the Army. My mother never let us have the consoles growing up. You have the Commodore 64, play on our computer. It was old even then. And so I didn't really game. So when I got out of the Army, the first thing I did was I bought an Xbox and Halo. So been playing since that. And then probably the Elder Scrolls series and Fallout because those are my other two. And anything with dice is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So, all right, Nick, since you picked Halo, if you could live in that world, would you? If you would get isekai'd there?
Only if I could be a Spartan.
Okay. That's
I
fair.
don't want to be an ODST. Those guys are cannon fodder.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Nathan? If you could live in the Fallout world, you go into the wasteland?
No.
You don't want any Nuka-Cola?
I don't want nuclear warfare, thank you.
I will say
or its after effects. I heard it's hazardous to your health.
Indeed, but they do have good music playing in that little robot that floats around and follows you.
That is also true.
I mean, you can't beat a good soundtrack following you around your life. All right, Melissa, if you could get sucked into your game world, you gonna do it?
Oh, I don't know. Eating celery aside, the Fable world is kind of dull because you mostly just run around and kill things. So some days, yes, I would like to be sucked into that world because it's just that simple. Probably not most of the time.
Okay. Jana?
See, I would jump in there for the cooking mechanic because Breath of the Wild has a wonderful go gather all the stuff and make cool things cooking mechanic. I don't really want to fight the big things because they're big and gross, but I would enjoy running around and gathering all the things and discovering recipes. So, if you're isekai'ing and you can go back and forth, then jump over there, play for a little while, come back. I could do that.
So is that normal in isekai that you can go back and forth? That's a question we're going to come back to. All right. Nick is giving you advice in the side chat, so we're going to share with everyone. Eat meat, be awesome. All right, Heather, if you could get sucked into either one of those games, you going?
Pokemon, definitely, 100%. I would love to be a Pokemon trainer. Xenoblade, it depends upon who I am in the world. If I'm just a regular commoner, no, because I'm going to get eaten. But if I'm one of the heroes who like survive fighting God at least once or twice in the series, yeah, I can handle that. I have the power for it.
So Halo, yeah, maybe after the Covenant War is over, I'd be okay there.
More like red versus blue.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Fallout, yeah, I don't really want to be irradiated. I hear it does horrible things to your man parts, and no thank you. The Skyrim world,
Priorities.
okay. Yeah, I gotta have your priorities. The Skyrim world, you could probably be okay if you avoid the dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's pretty.
Just watch out for the Khajiit; they steal.
Mm.
I know I'm racially stereotyping a whole traitor race, but you do what you got to do. They stole my stuff one too many times. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
All right, with that out of the way, I think it's time we define our terms. So first off, what is GameLit? Don't all go at once.
Go, Melissa. You have opinions about this. I know.
No, go. Not me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So for me, GameLit, I often view as a companion to LitRPG, and GameLit and LitRPG I view as two separate but related things. The essential difference for me being that LitRPG tends to be very stat heavy, whereas GameLit doesn't. But both have elements of like RPG gaming and whatnot in them. So that's my essential difference.
So
I would agree with that. Yeah, that's the distinction I'd make.
So GameLit, according to all things factual, which we call Wikipedia, because they never get anything wrong. And I'll link to it so you can read it too. But they're saying GameLit is a genre where the story involves the characters being immersed in a game world, where the world itself has game rules. And the difference between that and LitRPG, which was started, GameLit branched off, was the LitRPG has the progression and the stats part. Like you said, it's crunchier, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I understand there were also back in the day some lawsuits involved in the terms. We don't need to go there. Lawyers are boring. We'll move on. So do those definitions work for everyone, just so we've defined our terms as we go forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the level of crunchy, and there's a really wide spectrum.
Oh yeah.
That I found all the way from the ones that are uber crunchy, you must know upper level math in order to understand what's going on, to the ones that basically just kind of give a nod to, yeah, there's stats and progression going on, and maybe we're going to slap a character sheet at the very end so you can see what they look like, but it doesn't actually show up through the story. And there's a whole spectrum there, and it's all wonderful, and it all has an audience, but some audiences will say, yes, I want it really crunchy, or yes, I don't really care about the crunchy.
Okay. So what do you guys think of why the genre is so popular?
Oh, I think that, okay, to break it down to the basics, this is a genre that appeals to a lot of male readers, which is not to say that women don't read it too, but the primary audience is men. And I think personally that it's tapping into this desire on the part of male readers to be to have things that they care about without having it be torn down as, well, you're a guy, you shouldn't like this or this or this.
Absolutely.
It's, straight up power fantasy in a lot of cases. It appeals to male readers, and I love that. I feel like for a lot of male readers, they've been kind of neglected for a while. And this is a way for them to really tap into stuff that they care about. So I think that's why it's so popular, is that you have this great silent audience that has just not been reached for years and years, and all of a sudden we've got something that appeals to them, and they're devouring it. It's just, I think that's what drives it. And then, from there, everybody can enjoy it. There's really nothing exclusive about it. That's the other great thing, is that even though it's tapping into this audience, it's not saying, well, you can only be male if you want to read this, which I'm counting on that for my own books, is that, they're not, necessarily geared for one particular audience. And so I think that's its real strength.
For me,
I
the
think
strength of it, I absolutely agree with everything you just said. For me, the strength of it, it is just pure fun. And that's the books themselves, but also the readership. Like, I always have a good time when I go into a Lit RPG Facebook group. Like, I always leave happier than when I started. And one thing that I really like about the community too is that it tends to be positive. Like, it has its tiffs, but very frequently I will go onto a Facebook group where someone will post someone will make a post that's equivalent to, "Hey guys, what's the worst lit RPG you've ever read? Let's hate on it." And there will immediately be people in the comments going, "We don't do that here." And I love that they love their own genre. The readers love the genre so much that they don't want that kind of hate to happen within their own space. And that's really refreshing because that doesn't happen in a lot of fandoms.
Yeah, and
Well, a
it's
lot of the-
interesting because it's interesting because for a while, years ago, there was more of a gatekeeping aspect to Lit RPG and GameLit, where people were, and I think this was a result of trying to defend their space. You had people saying, well, this is Lit RPG and this isn't, and that's really changed. That is not the case anymore. It is really joyful. It's really fun, and people are enjoying it, and they're sharing that love. And it's like you say, they are celebrating. They're not looking to tear down what's awful. They are celebrating what they've got.
And you get this great avatar in how the stories are written, because you have a lot of them are people passing into a game world. There's some everyman character that readers really glom onto because it could be some dude like them that goes into this place, and when they go into this place, they get to be cool. They get to be the chosen one. They get to be the guy that gets the girl. They get to be all of these things. And so there's a lot of play into that through the avatar. And I think it also reflects how much story is being put into video games. Because just when we were talking about it, you're like, well, in Halo, only if it's after this part of the game. That's not part of the game. That's part of the story. Because
I've
Halo
read
has
the
a
novel.
story, and Dragon Age has a story, and all these have stories. And so it's kind of that reflection of, in the video game, they're playing the story, and then they're reading these stories. And so you get that back and forth that they want even more of that ability to play through the story. And they get that again through the avatar. They're playing the story the same way they do online.
And as someone who's written some of them, because I started one with James before he passed, is you can, like, it's like being a DM, but the players do exactly what you want them to.
Yep.
Which is a change.
I'm like, wow, I want to go left, and we actually go left.
One interesting thing that I've found about the genre too, and this primarily comes from reader reactions to the stuff that I've written, it's full of a lot of people who haven't necessarily read for fun before. And I get a lot of people who have said, I haven't read a book since school, but this was super fun, and I'm going to look up more Lit RPG because of what I've written. And I think that's really flattering for the genre too. You're making new readers out of people with this genre.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's one of those genres, and this is just speaking from my own experience. Like, I knew about it. We've talked to people in the early seasons of Blasters and Blades who wrote that. And initially, the way they described it was so crunchy and so math heavy. Like, I'm like, yeah, no thanks. And then when you started seeing the GameLit, where it got to be, not as intensive, when it sort of chilled out a little bit, and you saw the wider range of variants in the genre, started to be fun. So I wrote the one, and I realized that's what we were writing with James. I'm like, well, let me try reading one. And I found War Master, which I didn't call War Hamster this time. I'm like, and from there, I started buying way too many of them. I'm like, holy crap, I spent way too much money on books this month.
My phone heard you calling it War Hamster so much that the actual Instagram for War Hamsters showed up on suggested. I'm like, okay, I'll give her a follow.
Yeah, I have to figure out a way to write that story just because.
Absolutely.
Or maybe I'll write it as a character in the GameLit I write.
That would work as a GameLit character. It's like you think you're going to become like, you're reading, you get sucked into the world as the reader, but you're a hamster. You're a noble knight hamster.
Out of that. And that's another thing that I like about Lit RPG too. Like, the weird ones are not super common compared to the most popular things in the genre, but you can definitely get some crazy stuff in LitRPG, and that is absolutely just a sign of the author having fun.
We interviewed when this airs, it'll have been 2 months ago, Josh Hayes, who works for Athon Publishing, and they do a lot of their bigger sellers or GameLit, and one of their best sellers is a guy who's reincarnated as a tree, and that is the GameLit they are reading.
Wow.
I mean, who would have thought that you could have someone become a tree and that would be an interesting story, but people are going with it, and you could suspend your disbelief on a lot just for rule of cool.
Yep.
So, all right, Nathan, you're silent. Unmute. What do you got to say?
For me, the biggest aspect to GameLit and LitRPG is
Yay!
it's pure escapism, but it's something that you can relate to. Because a lot of the good ones, their stakes are very high. Especially if you get into some of my favorites. Mine is Sword Art Online, and you're in the game, you're dead. Can't get any bigger than that. Some of the other ones that I've read that are GameLit, the stakes aren't as high, and then it's kind of boring because you go, well, what's going to happen? Nothing.
You don't want to be
like
bored when you're reading.
You don't want like Diablo, Diablo game dynamics where you die, they just kind of put you a little bit further from where you died, and then you have full health and all your potions are refilled. It's like, okay, well, if I go and if I get mobbed and I die, well, no harm, no foul. I'm just going to come back.
Okay. So do you
and that's
have
an interesting game mechanic, though, is that in a lot of games you can just respawn and come back. So when you're writing the GameLit and when you're reading it, I like it when they come up with a way to say, well, okay, maybe there is a way to come back. There is a resurrection, or whatever, but they do it in a way that it works in the game world. So it's not just the easy thing of, oh, you just respawn and you've got all your stuff. No, it's the, back to EverQuest, where it's the naked run through the Karanas trying to get back to your corpse because all your stuff is there.
Yep.
And those can be some funny reading to go, oh, yes, they're dead and they're in the whatever place the dead go to, and then they have to work through coming and bringing that back. But because the genre's got that openness to it, you can play with death that way to say, what does that mean? How do they associate with their deities? How they do all of that so that dead doesn't have to be dead, but it can still have stakes around it because there's other mechanics that come into it. Sorry, JR, totally cut you off. Your turn.
No, I was saying part of the fun with it is you can do that absurd. Like, Nick, you're going to appreciate this for the level of absurdity. I decided I was going to write one. I needed someone who knew the game mechanics because with the computer and PC and consoles, you don't have to know the math that happens in the background, which makes it very difficult to write the books if you don't understand the mechanics. Heather has a math genius as her husband. She's lucked out. Well, I just decided to co-write with Jenna. That's one of her many personalities. And to show the level of ridiculous,
she's a culinary genius.
She is.
Yep,
she is. She does math and chemistry, right? But we have a cav officer as a hero, and when does that ever happen? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, now I know it's fantasy.
That's okay. We put the cav officer on a horse, and guess what? He can't ride.
He has spurs he learned, but he can't ride a horse.
The irony is,
joke. We will beat that dead horse, pun intended.
Oh, yeah. Through the entire series, there will be jokes about his golden spurs and the fact that he cannot ride a horse. They hate him. He hates them. And yet.
Okay.
Although for everyone who failed their EIB test, if you came close, you could pass the spur ride. You're good. I looked into the differences, and I'm like, that's like being infantry on easy mode. All right, back to GameLit. So obviously, since I made the joke about computer games versus tabletop games, do you guys have a preference on what is used as the mechanic? Because you can kind of get sucked into either or if you take the Portal Fantasy aspect. Do you guys have a preference? Do you think one works better?
My appetite is so basic that they're both the same to me.
I chose tabletop for mine because that's what I'm more familiar with. But in terms of what I read, I don't really have a preference. I just like that I have an interest in the less crunchy side, but still game here, but still lit RPG mechanics. But whether it's tabletop or computer, that's I'm fine either way.
Do you think one works better than the other as far as telling the story?
No, I think it depends on what you want to tell, and I think it's probably a good idea for it to fit whatever story you want to tell. Like for my series, it's straight up fantasy role playing, like a tabletop role playing campaign, and so I think it would not have been a good idea to try and do a computer based system.
Okay. What about you, Nathan? Do you have a preference when you read or when you write it?
Reading it is computer. There's a couple that I've read that just wouldn't have worked if it was tabletop, because a lot of the ones that I read are the Portal Fantasy, where it's not a quest in a video game. I'm not writing or reading a quest in World of Warcraft. It is somebody from our world interacting with the computer world. They're stuck in there, and for some reason, it's a Portal Fantasy. The story is they got to get home, or the story is they got to get home as a sword art and not die, which is the big one. And there's another one that I read. I can't remember what the hell it's called, but they just woke up one day in the video game. They don't know what's going on. They know it's the video game, but they can't. They can die, but they don't know what's going on, and so the stakes are what's going on. Turns out they lose their memory when they die, but that's beside the point. If I can remember the book, it'd be better.
So do you think the Portal Fantasy or that isekai is required for it to be game lit, or can it just be a book in the world where that's just normal?
I don't think it's required, but I think it definitely works well for the kind of genre that it is when you consider that it's very self-insert fantasy. One of the things about not all GameLit and LitRPG, but certainly some, is that the main character is sometimes a blank slate kind of character that is very easy for the reader to project themselves on. And if you have someone who's been isekai'd to another world and say, for whatever reason, they have amnesia or there's some kind of, or the past is somehow irrelevant, for some stories, it makes it easier for the reader to inject themselves into that character and enjoy the story more. But I don't think it's a necessary thing.
Yeah, it's one of those very commonly used tropes.
Yeah.
But you can think of ones that are just happening in a game-like world. But then you get fantasy that's like that too, where as you read it, you go, I can see the DM working behind the scenes because of just the way that it's written.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly game lit, but it is kind of a cousin three times removed kind of thing, where you get that same game feeling in the way that the fantasy or the science fiction is written, where I can kind of see, and at this point the DM rolled and got a natural 20 and this is what happened. So you've got a range.
Yeah, at that point, we raised the question of what's the difference between Portal Fantasy and Isekai Fantasy, because I think there is a slight difference between them. And for me, like I watch a lot of anime. My primary understanding of Isekai is through anime. Isekai anime, yeah, it's Portal Fantasy, but it almost always involves some kind of game mechanic. The character isn't necessarily falling into a game, but they have access to stats or some kind of thing, and I basically view it as a subset of Portal Fantasy.
Oh, see, I would say there's not much difference at all between them, but I'm thinking of the anime Re:Zero, where there is no game mechanic, but it's an isekai story. And so I think if there's a difference between them, it may not be a useful difference as far as selling a story goes. Like if someone is interested in the aspect of Portal Fantasy, they're very likely to be as interested in an isekai story, just because the draw is someone from our world coming into another world, and that's the important thing, and that's the thing that's common to both. So for me, there's really not a huge difference between them. But I think, I don't know, I guess I come back to, if there's a difference, it would be an interesting one to argue, but I don't know what kind of practical, in terms of what people are going to enjoy. I'm not sure what practical difference there is.
So isekai is listed as in its own definition as a subgenre of portal fantasy. Portal fantasy just means you're leaving one location and going to a different world, and there doesn't have to be any game mechanics. So
That's right.
I have one where it's just, the Einstein posited the multiple dimensions. The portal takes you to a different dimension. You're not in a game. It's just real life, different dimension. So that would not be an isekai, though, because there's no underlying game mechanic.
Well, technically, what they're leaving out is that isekai literally means other world or parallel world. So really, the definition there that includes the game mechanic is a more modern one. So in a literal sense, there is no difference between portal and isekai, simply because that's the definition. But yeah, I mean that's why I say you could argue the difference, but when it comes down to are you going to enjoy this story, you're not going to enjoy it anymore if you call it isekai versus if you call it portal fantasy, because the elements are the same. And so an isekai story does not have to have GameLit mechanics. Like I said, ReZero, which is one of my favorites, has no game mechanic and has that resurrection question. The whole point of the story, is that he keeps dying and getting resurrected, and is trying to figure out the world. And he's not a great guy to begin with, so he's screwing up all the time, and it's painful deaths. Mm-hmm. So he will die until he achieves some save point effectively, and then he will move on, and then he'll start dying again, and he'll go back to that new save point and back to the new save point until he figures out something new. And it's fascinating. So yeah, I would say it really does come down to, if you want to make the definition, sure, but if we're talking about what people are going to love, I don't think it matters what you call it.
True. Right, because you get isekai that's older, like Inuyasha. And that was definitely isekai. It's Japanese anime. It's portal fantasy. And that one goes to that question you asked about, can you go back and forth? Most of the time in LitRPG and GameLit, the answer is no. Once you go through the portal, you have to stay there until you figure out, can you go back, whether you go back, all that kind of stuff. But some of these early ones, again, Inuyasha is one of my favorites, but that portal was something that they figured out, and she could go back and forth between worlds. And some of the funnier episodes is what happens when Inuyasha comes through the portal and ends up in the Earth realm, because he's just as much of a fish out of water on this side as she is on that side. So he and Kagome going back and forth, that's part of the story, and it's part of the reason it's really funny. And there's several that do that kind of thing, but those do tend to be a little bit older. And as LitRPG is kind of really kicked up in popularity, you're seeing more of attaching that to it. But it's still isekai. It's portal fantasy, and that doesn't have any game mechanics to it.
Yeah. The book that I was talking about is called Log Horizon.
Oh, cool.
Long or log?
Log. I might have to reverse my camera.
Put it in the notes.
There we go. Oh no, that didn't work. I know technology. Great.
So it's upside whoopside.
There we go.
Even better.
We like to have fun.
That looks good.
You can tell that I've been drinking
water, people, because he's trying to stay healthy as he games.
Water.
That's how that works.
There's water in bourbon, right?
Well,
anyway,
a little bit.
We're gonna pause for a moment where we're gonna shamelessly shill for the woman this time. And Melissa, I'm gonna hold on. Let me show this lovely cover. Is sponsoring this episode with her own GameLit book.
The War Master.
You want me to tell you about it?
Sure. Pimp the book. Do your thing.
So, for 5 years, Adarin has waited to get the call, the event where the system controlling her world grants her a class and appropriate skills to become an adventurer. When the system makes her a war master, Adarin eagerly sets out on her first journey. The problem? Her class is useless. No one believes a war master is anything but a joke. They aren't strong fighters, they have no magic, and they don't have powerful skills. But Adarin hasn't waited all these years to give up now. With the help of a young man from another world, she's going to prove this war master can do anything.
Oh, we need a dramatic music. Unfortunately, most music has copyrights, and I don't feel like
Yeah,
fighting.
no. It's not worth it. Yeah,
So imagine, dear listener, there was dramatic music in the background.
absolutely.
Ta-da.
Yeah,
Heavy
something by
drums.
John Williams.
Yeah.
Heavy drums are good. We could do a drum
Mhm.
circle. So that was they're really excellent books. I've reviewed 1 and 2 for Upstream Reviews. I think the second one isn't out yet, although I don't. It
Yes,
probably
the
will
second
be
one's
by
out.
then.
Second one's out. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the third one will be out. I don't know when this airs, but
No. I meant my
yeah.
second review.
Oh, your second review. Oh, yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, I haven't
I
seen
don't
that.
think it's out yet, but I submitted it. So,
Oh, cool.
Thank
you.
They're good books, so you will enjoy them. And I listened to them. I was traveling to visit my nephews in West Virginia, so it was a road trip long enough to justify an audiobook. And my mom, who doesn't read that genre at all, was interested enough. She bought it so she could figure out how it ended after the trip ended. So
I love
that's
that.
a good sign. It's a good sign.
That's great. That's great. I love
If
it.
she ends up addicted to the drug of GameLit and she's like penniless and on the street, it's all your fault. Just so you know.
Okay, I gladly take blame for that. I want people to read more of GameLit and LitRPG. I totally do.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to the topic. So, from a history perspective of the genre, when did it really take off? Obviously, once something takes off, everyone will look backwards and be like, "Oh, this was definitely the first one." But functionally, when did it become a genre?
Oh gosh.
I really don't know.
And part of that is U.S. or outside of the U.S.
Mhm.
because in
Yeah.
a lot of Oriental writing in Japan and in China and that kind of stuff, this has been around for a very, very, very
Oh,
long
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's picked up a lot of popularity here. But you also start thinking about it and the idea of portal fantasy. I mean, that's Lewis Carroll. Because what is Alice in Wonderland but portal fantasy? C.S. Lewis did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, all portal fantasy there. There's a lot of classics that are portal fantasy. But this latest upswing in the way that we look at it now is in the U.S., again, not as long as it is elsewhere.
Mhm.
I hesitate to put a number of years to it, but it is, fairly recent. But it
I
has
would
been
say within
going
the
on with
past 10
light
to
novels and
15
stuff
years.
forever. hmm
Well,
Um,
according to the research I did in the pre-show, Andre Norton's Quag Keep from '78 was the first one that it listed as lit RPG.
Huh,
Okay.
fascinating.
In English. So, although I
Okay,
am
I'd go
sure
with
there
that.
are going to be people that are going to come at us in the comments and say, "Well, what about this one?" And you might be
Mhm.
right too.
Mhm.
I know it became a lot more popular with the Ready Player One craze that took off.
That's what I was
Mhm.
thinking of. I was trying to think of a
Yeah.
solid identifiable starting point, but I haven't read Ready Player One. So is it lit RPG or does it just have
No.
game
It's GameLit. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
It's GameLit.
it's instead of being inside the video game, it's a VR game where you have to you
Right.
get the headset and you have to move around. And the
Mhm.
story is centered around the game. They're trying to
Mhm.
destroy the game, and these guys are trying to save the game.
Yeah.
And that's the stakes, and that's why it's such a good book, is that it has that aspect to it.
Mhm.
Where here's a world that everyone loves, but here's this evil corporation that wants to destroy it. Well, we got to stop them.
But if you're not actually in the game, does it qualify as lit RPG or game lit? Because if they're just wearing VR headset, how's that different functionally than just you at home playing a video game as opposed to getting sucked into the video game?
I would
Yeah.
argue that
Be part of the story, regardless.
Yeah. Okay. We can argue about that in the comments then. We'll let people do that.
Yeah, let them fight it out.
It's a fringe thing.
Yeah, and it's part of the fun is those niche arguments.
According to Wikipedia, it's a lit RPG.
Yeah.
There you go. Wikipedia is never wrong.
Boom, mic drop.
So,
Go ahead.
We spoke more generally about the appeal of the genre, but let's individually go. What is it that appeals to you as the reader or the creator, outside of the more broad why everyone's doing it? Why does it appeal to you? So I'll go first while you guys all think about it. Then. I've always loved games, ever since I've discovered them. I read, the Forgotten Realms, which are essentially novelization of the D&D games. So for me, it was just the appeal of it. It is that, leaving your boring life and, going and doing something awesome. The very clear good versus evil. I think too often we get quicksanded into the gray of life. And one of the things I like about games is most modern games are kind of going away from that in some respects, but the defined good versus evil, this is exactly what your mission is. Let's do the thing instead of trying to just figure it out as you go.
Mm-hmm.
For me, both as a reader and a creator, I get a tremendous feeling of nostalgia when I read LitRPG. And it's not that like no LitRPG is old enough for me to be nostalgic for it from my childhood, but I get that same sense of fun reading LitRPG that I got when experiencing my childhood favorite games. And that's a huge part of it for me. In terms of my own individual creation, and the first GameLit series that I wrote, Monster Punk Horizon, was written intentionally as this love letter to all the monster hunting, collecting, befriending games I loved as a kid. And I got to adulthood and realized, like, I still play Monster Hunter. I still love these kinds of games. And so at that time, one of the things about the Monster Hunter franchise in particular is that it's really ridiculous. Like, my character runs around with a 6-foot greatsword. There's no regard for physics whatsoever. Like, it's nuts. But none of the media associated with it, like comics or anything at that point when I was playing it, reflected the ridiculousness. It was all kind of somewhat serious storytelling, and there was such a disconnect that I was like, I want to write my own ridiculous Monster Hunter series. And that was basically the seed. And since Monster Hunter's a video game, I mean, naturally it had to be in a GameLit series, and that was sort of the seed that started what eventually became a love letter to all the monster hunting games that I've ever loved. So there's fun little Easter eggs in it that refer to all these little games. But it was just that childhood love, the adulthood feelings toward the genre or toward video games in general, and then just the sheer fun of it, because it's just it is a uniquely fun, ridiculous genre, and I love it for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I want to hear from Nathan first, actually, before I go off on my screen.
There are three things that I like about the genre of GameLit and LitRPG. One is the characters. I have to fall in love with these characters. If I don't, then I don't care. Right? If the guy's a doofus, he's a doofus, and I'm going to put the book away. The second is the stakes. I didn't really enjoy the Ready Player One. I didn't care about the world. It's a cool world, yay. But it wasn't all that. It was like, okay, well, there'll be other worlds. Like, this is modern video games. Go on Steam, there's thousands.
Yeah.
You like a certain genre, a certain type of game, there's 10 of them. Exactly the same. I don't know if it was Hollow or Sky or whatever. Sorry. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Pokemon, Pal World. There's other games. So the stakes has to be up there where, I cared about the characters. You sucked me in with the characters. Like, cool, I like this guy or gal or whatever. And now they're going to die, for instance. Okay, well, now I'm in. And I just drew a blank on the third, for fuck's sake. I do that. I get drawn into some explanation, and then I don't have a paper to write shit down.
So are you willing to give a chance if the character's a doofus, but because you've read the description, at some point in time he's going to grow and become less of a doofus?
They have to grow, though. If I get through 6 chapters and this guy hasn't even got this inkling of, hey, maybe what I'm doing is wrong and I should probably start the try-fail cycle, then okay, time to move on.
So you don't want a slow burn?
I don't mind the slow burn as long as the guy's learning. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's one book, again, can't remember the name, and I won't give the name anyways. There's 10 chapters in, and he's still a whiny bitch.
Note to self: don't write a whiny bitch. Got it.
I just realized that we probably had a family.
Nick, you know what to do.
I do, sir.
And it was the Canadian, the nice one. He's the one dropping the words today.
Yeah, what's up with that?
They're going to take away your
They're
maple leaf. if you
called
keep this
Geneva suggestions for a reason.
That's what we called them.
up.
For me, I from even before I was a writer, I really wanted to tell a story. Back before I even knew that this was a bad idea, I wanted to tell a story that was basically a role-playing game in text, like our greatest adventures. And I didn't necessarily want to write up any role-playing adventures we had in our tabletop game, but just that kind of story. And so I did that with Company of Strangers. That was back in 2018. And it was not a GameLit LitRPG story. It was just obviously, role-playing adventures on quests and things like that. And so when I discovered this genre, it felt like just this sudden match. Like I had been waiting for this my whole life, and here it was, and it was something that I could do. I could use this, and I could write this. And so it is so much fun, and it was so freeing. I mean, I had been kind of feeling bogged down in my writing before I wrote the first War Master book. And 4 months later, I have 5 books written, and they're fun and exciting, and people like them. And it just feels like you have an endless opportunity to play. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is like one of the ones I read has the main character is isekai'd into the body of a lizard, and she grows and matures as a lizard and gains class levels as a lizard, and my husband is the one who turned me on to that one, and I'm like, no, that's dumb. And you're reading it going, wow, this is really fun. This is really good. I can't believe I thought that a lizard had no potential. And it was just, you can find like the tree, the guy he's a tree, and there's just no limits. Somebody says, hey, this is the idea I have, and everybody else is willing to go with it. And I love that in my reading, and I love it in being able to create what I'm doing, even though what I'm writing is not nearly so out there as some of these. But I love that if I wanted to, I could do that.
On the subject of strange topics, one of my absolute favorite pieces of GameLit is a Japanese light novel called Reborn as a Vending Machine. Now I Wander the Dungeon.
Oh, yes.
And it's got anime now, too. I'm kind of indifferent to the anime, but the light novel is one of those where it is a completely ridiculous concept, but it knows exactly what it wants to do and does it very well. And it's basically a concept. The main character is reincarnated as a vending machine in a fantasy world. He's got access to all the things that he ever bought in our world, that he can generate them through his vending machine. When you consider that kind of excuse me, I'm up. It's almost 10 o'clock. My brain's turning off. When you consider the kinds of things you can find in vending machines in our world and place them in a place with medieval technology, that has really interesting implications, and the story totally rocks it. And it's very simple, but it's so charming. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Nick, what is it you personally like about LitRPG or GameLit?
Well, I haven't really read anything, but it does happen in other mediums, mostly TVs and movies. Like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon from the 80s. That was definitely GameLit. They were players. They got sucked into the world.
Absolutely.
But their DM was mean.
Yeah, their GM was a dick because they went through hell. It reminds me of like playing in the barracks, and like anytime I saw the GM kind of squint his eyes and then have like a devilish smile, I know I was about to get taken to class. It's like I hope I'm rolling nat 20s here, because if I roll a crit one, I'm done. But that's one of the things I like. I like the immersion of it. I like the escapism of it, because it's escapism within escapism, because you're already kind of going into these fantasy worlds to escape reality. And so I think that's what connects you with the main character of that medium. Is that person wanted to escape too, and then you escaped a little too much, to where you leave this reality and go to that reality, and like if I woke up in the Diablo world, I would scream. Even though I love playing the game, I love walking around with my like really weird samurai armor in Diablo 4, and I love killing the monsters, and I love hunting the demons, and I like killing the boars, and I like doing all these missions. But if I woke up in that world, I'd piss my pants. Even though I'm a giant hulky dude, because I'm a barbarian, and I'm going to start necromancy probably next week. But I like playing the tank. Yeah, everybody hit me right now. I don't care. I can take it.
I like it. I love it. I want some more of it.
I like it. I love it. Yeah, smack the hell out of me. I probably should go to therapy for that shit, though. But I like the escapism within escapism. It's I don't know, like who hasn't read a book and been like, man, I wish I could live in that world. I wish I could be in that world, just get like sucked into it, So I just think it takes it to a whole nother level. It's a lot of fun. I haven't done anything lit RPG. It sounds boring as hell. If I want to do that, I'll just play a tabletop game. But those are my thoughts on that genre. I think it's really cool, and I'm glad that it has a market. And apparently it's fairly new, like what, 10, 15 years?
That it's taken off.
Yeah,
That it's taken off. Okay. I mean, it's happened in other mediums, and I think that's cool. And I probably think that video games probably had a lot to do with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Popularity also is an interesting reflection on how significant video games have become in pop culture in and of themselves. Because you have streamers, you have like they're a lot more prominent now than they were 10, 20 years ago. And and it's very much reflected in the literature.
My doctor actually prescribed me to play video games.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's
after the stroke.
Yep, it's mid-body activity, so it uses both parts of your brain. So I was actually told that our open world type RPGs, because you have to think and it's not just smash buttons, are actually good for your noggin.
Yeah, except for Diablo 4. There's a couple of levels there where I'm probably going to have another stroke.
So back to
Diablo 4 to you.
Yeah, back to the original question. So Jana, why do you personally like GameLit, LitRPG, all the things?
Well, mine goes back to the role-playing aspect, because I started doing tabletop role-playing games when I was 10 and played on, I was part of a musical dance theater group, and we bussed all over to do all these tours, and a whole bunch of kids that are really bored in the back of a bus broke out the dice and started teaching us all how to do role-playing games. And that feeling of that character insert that comes with role-playing games, where you can do and be things that you would never do in your real life, was so much fun. And the books represent a lot of that same kind of thing. It's this going into that other world, and you become stronger and better and faster, and you have powers that you can't have here, which is a big thing, because sometimes on a daily basis I go, I would give anything for magic that would just do the damn dishes for me, because I don't want to do them again. And yet that is not possible.
I got a 14-year-old boy. I just tell him. That's the magic right there. Do the dishes.
That
is
that helped him. But there's lots of stuff you can't do. And one of the ones that I read, Jay Boyce, and I can't think of the name of it. I'll look it up. But she did something interesting, and I think this is another aspect of it that brings in an audience. And her main character is somebody who is disabled, seriously physically disabled, and going into the video game represents a chance to have a whole body again. And I deal with chronic illness and chronic pain. And so sometimes when I'm reading this, it's like, yeah, it's kind of nice to read something where you're kind of getting that self-insert, and it's a self-insert where nothing hurts and doesn't go crunk, crunk, crunk. And you can still run around and shoot things and do all these things like I did when I was a teenager that I don't do anymore. And so having those things, I think that reaches yet another audience, where it is saying, here's a world where if I were to pass through a portal and go somewhere else, would I get rid of all those things that are limiting here and be able to be that heroic thing? And there's a great amount of appeal in that.
Mhm.
You know, who doesn't want to be the hero of a story? And so I think Portal Fantasy and LitRPG really grabs onto that idea of, yes, there's the mechanics and the stuff, and you can see where that's fun because it's fun to look at things and see how you can level and what you can call stats and all that kind of thing. But it's also those stories where you can say, yeah, it's the role-playing game. It's the chance to be things that you aren't and to have powers that you don't have, but maybe you wish you did. So I love just that whole thing to be able to kind of explore there. Like I say, that's why I did Mushes. That's why I did tabletop. I used to write in play by email games where we would choose a property, and we would write mutants, and we would write in the world of darkness, and we would write in all those mechanics and use the mechanics to keep things fair and to keep the story moving. But we wrote millions of words as a group about these kinds of stories because it was that, here's a self-insert to go and be these people doing these things. So I like that escapism. I like that insert, and away you go.
Some of
If
the
I
first,
ever wrote in that genre, the first thing would be like, "Oh, my back doesn't hurt. This is awesome."
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It would be
But
the best
the
thing
GM
ever.
would be like, "No, for you to keep that trait, you're gonna have to roll for initiative."
Okay,
so
roll for it, monkey boy.
Yeah.
Crit ones. Damn it.
Oh.
And my back hurts and my knee hurts.
I used to be an adventurer, and then I took an arrow to the knee.
Yep. Lots of arrows to the knee.
So I grew up reading the Choose Your Own Adventure, Pick a Path, whatever they're calling them these days, so they don't get sued. And one of the ones I remember distinctly was called Lone Wolf, where you're this warrior and you actually have to like fight the character as he goes, and what decisions you make affects the combat, which then affects the direction. Would you consider something like that an early version of like a GameLit? Because there are game mechanics, but it's just you directing the character as the reader.
I would. I think they had some more elaborate versions of those for adults by they did them for different properties in the 80s. So you had Vlad Taltosh by Stephen Bruce. You had Catherine Kurtz's Durini series. You had there was one for Pern, and you rolled up a character and you did that as part of it. So you were within the game. I think that would be considered an early version of GameLit. I think that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, and speaking back to what you were talking about on the online, Jana, some of the earliest uses of the chat rooms on AOL dial-up days, back when we sacrificed robots to get online, all hail our robot overlords, was actually people role-playing out essentially games.
I did it.
Yeah.
You jumped on bulletin boards and you jumped in forums, and we had the Red Dragon Inn, which was a nexus point between any place that you wanted to come in, and you role played in messages back and forth. It was the same self-insertion thing that we love in the GameLit and the LitRPG now, where we've been doing this forever. And role players are like that. On a lot of servers, they'll say, this is a chat server and people aren't supposed to role play. And people do it anyway, because they just can't help but bring this alternate identity in with them.
Okay. So do you think that the genre of GameLit of LitRPG only works in a fantasy setting? Because we've mostly focused on fantasy stories. Could it work in sci-fi?
You could totally do sci-fi with it. I mean, Tron's
absolutely.
GameLit.
Yeah.
Tron is
What I'm
GameLit.
working on sci-fi.
I think presently fantasy sells better, but you can certainly do sci-fi.
You look at Jumanji. That's adventure.
Yeah.
I think it can cross all the different genres easily.
Yeah, I think
apply a game mechanic to just about everything.
And I think if the interest is in the game mechanic, then the genre is not nearly so much of an off-putting thing. Like, you care about the game mechanic. Well, this is a sci-fi GameLit. Well, okay, I don't care because I care about the GameLit and it's a sci-fi setting. Maybe that's different. Maybe that's interesting.
It's Starfinder. I think the thing that we run into is that as writers, we're looking for systems that we can use, that we can scrub the numbers off, and then we're able to do the math and that kind of thing without having to write our very own system. And there are fewer tabletop RPG systems and some of that kind of stuff in science fiction and others to draw from, because you start thinking, you're like, well, there's D&D and there's Pathfinder and there's, this and that and the other. And then you start thinking, okay, well, for the sci-fi ones, you had Star Hero and you have Traveler and you have Starfinder, but it's a lot harder for me to rattle off a whole list of what you can do with that. And one that you don't see a lot of, because it's kind of by its nature already crossover, is paranormal. Because you could do Wizard of Darkness stuff, but that's urban fantasy, really, where you're in this world or that world. You would have to then, that could become science fiction if you have a world that is the paranormal that they portal into. So there's still a lot of things that I don't think have been really thoroughly explored, where there's probably a lot of potential for audience, because there's different ways that you can do this, just looking at different games. But fantasy is the #1 genre you see in role-playing games. So it makes sense that we see that echoed in the LitRPG, because we're pulling from those stats, we're pulling from those ideas, and then making them our own.
Do you think it's because
need stats for them to be game lit? Like the Log Horizon book I showed you, there's no game stats in that. They don't need to there's no number crunching. They just go and they do things. And they explain it. They go, hey, I have a 17 strength. So they're there, but they're not used. And so a lot of them do that, because it's not about some games, some game it's not about them leveling up. It's about them doing something. So
yeah, I intentionally wrote Monster Punk Horizon without stats, because whenever, like, I love LitRPG as a genre, but I always skip the stat sheets when I read, because I just don't care about the numbers.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's an audience all the way across, because you hear that side and then you hear the other. Some of what I've done is editing for people that are doing LitRPG and GameLit and other things. And it's always figuring out, for what the author wants and what their audience wants, are we using enough stats? Are we using too many stats? Kind of where do you want to be? Because there's plenty of audience, and some of the audience is agnostic in that they will read it all. And some of the audience has very distinct feelings, even now, about it's best if it is about cultivation. It's best if it's about progression. It's best if it's about harems. It's best if it's about very certain tropes and very certain levels of crunchiness. So you kind of have to identify, this is the audience I want to appeal to, and bring that into your crunchy.
I read a review on, I can't remember the author's name, and it was a 1-star because they had no farming. They didn't have They didn't have, no, I'm not talking about farming as in Stardew Valley. I'm talking about as farming as you don't need to go out and, this is for anyone listening that doesn't understand. That you don't have to go out and collect resources or anything like that, or you're trying to grow your stats up. Like there wasn't the book 1 star. I'm like,
there's no grind.
There's no grind.
Yeah.
I want to
Those are
their
really
favorites.
specific things people look for in the genre, though. That's one of its charms for me. Like, sometimes it's infuriating with YouTube reviews, but it's also interesting just to see what people latch onto.
I think
the farming thing. Oh, shut up.
Yeah, it would be funny to see them where, most RPGs, like the computer game ones that I've ever seen, like one of your first missions is go to a basement and clear out the rats, because you're level 1 or whatever.
Basic yard trash.
Yeah, it would be funny to see that in a game one time. Like, your mission, go kill these rats.
I've only done this in like 20 other games, but all right, here we go.
It should be
maximum effort.
It should be not in book 1. It should be like book 4, and them going, oh, what now?
Yeah. That's the quest you have for me?
And then, of
course,
the
big rats.
The big rats. It spits
rodents of unusual size.
Yeah, the Rouse. You have to fight Rouse now, and they're on fire.
That's right. And they're on fire.
Yeah. So do you think it works better? And this is just us. Well, since we were talking about early sci-fi, would you consider The Last Starfighter, since the game turned out to be real? Would that be GameLit or LitRPG, or was that?
No.
Nathan and I just talked about this in the side chat. Yeah.
No, that was
a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
That's
great
like
movie.
Ender's Game.
Love that movie.
Using a game to teach them something, to accomplish something, but he really didn't jump through a portal. He just went to outer space.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we say launching from here to Mars, is that a portal fantasy? You're not going through a portal. You're just using the physics we understand, or extended physics, to fly from one planet to the next. And if the game's being used to train you or this, that, and the other, I think that's different than when you're becoming part of it.
Yeah, because he didn't actually enter the game. He just made use of it. He was actually playing a game. So, yeah.
It was a simulator. It's a
It
simulator,
was a simulator.
story,
Yeah.
not a...
Greetings, Starfighter.
They really need to make a movie too where it picks up like years later where he's suddenly
Yeah.
like the commander. Don't
We've been
we-
waiting 40 years for that sequel, and for the last 10 to 15 years, we're like,
know.
oh, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening, because the
Oh.
guy that played him still looks young as hell, even though he's like
Uh-huh.
60,
Uh-huh.
you know, but like, why not?
I
We're
know.
seeing this resurgence of sequels like with Ghostbusters, you know, with Frozen
Yeah.
Empire and then Afterlife, you know, they pass it on to you have that connection of the OG, and then it's passed on to a younger generation where they can pick up the torch and run. You could totally do that with Last Starfighter, and it's one of those sat on missed opportunities that Hollywood is just being dumb about.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Or at least give me a book series about it.
Uh-huh.
So
Carry on the tale.
what?
Carry on the tale. Like, I want to know
Oh
more.
yeah, absolutely. So do you tend to see in the genre where they're long running series, or are they a collection normally of standalone novels?
Long-running
Oh, it's
series.
series,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mhm.
Very much series based, and they can be really, really long, and you see a range of sizes too.
Mhm.
Because some people have 90 some odd books, but they're short and punchy. Sometimes you get much longer ones, and you get a lot of variance there. And as long as you're telling a good story, that people want to go into these worlds and stay there for a long time and enjoy it with the characters.
And there's the financial side of it where you have an advantage because most of these are in KU, and they have an advantage if the book is longer. So you get the LitRPG authors talking, and they'll have discussions about what's the right length of the series, what's the right length of the book, and there's all sorts of opinions as to what makes financial sense. But what it comes down to is we're telling a great story and we don't want it to end.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't know. I just started reading them, so right now the extent of my knowledge is I've read your books and I've bought, and they're next on my read and review, the series box sets by Heather, because I hope you didn't spend it all in one place. I'm just saying. But I definitely want to start getting more into it because it was so much fun. And lately, literature has been trying to bring the real world into the fiction, and I read to escape the real world. So I like that there's none of this drama on red versus blue and the politics and the social war and all that nonsense. I'm like, can we just have fun together? All of us be cool. So, okay. Any other questions we should discuss before we do this? I think I've covered all of my questions, but if you've got more.
I got one more. We've been talking about, this subject for a bit. For everybody on the panel, without naming your own series, name a favorite GameLit or Lit RPG series.
Sword Art Online. It was the first one. I got into it with the TV show because there is a TV show. And then I discovered there was light novels. And when the light novels are a lot farther along than the TV shows, so I read them all. And then there's also a couple spin-offs, and I've read those. Some of them weren't as good as the others, but some of them were. So,
what is a light novel?
It's a Japanese light novel. It's like the Log Horizon book where they're kind of thin.
You answered my question with the question in the answer, so you didn't actually answer it. What is a light novel? What makes it?
That's what they call them. They're
pages.
small, thin books.
Okay, so
genre name for it. They tend to have what I call "quote unquote" bestseller style writing, which is just really, really leisurely, easy to read writing styles, and they tend to be pretty short. So they're
fast reads.
They're kind of the bridge between the web novels and the manga in terms of Japanese writing. So you get people who are writing for the web novels. Sorry, they're writing web novels. They become light novels. They turn it into a manga. They turn it into an anime, and so that's like a path to success for Japanese lit RPG writers. But yeah, a light novel is, they don't call it light because the content and the style is light. That's just coincidence. But yeah, they are they are very general in terms of description. Not a lot of heavy description, not a lot of heavy character building. Very much quick takes on the character, on the plot, and on the, mainly because they are anticipating turning into something else. But for those of us who are into the series, they represent a really great way to keep ahead of the story. Kind of like how with GameLit and LitRPG, you have a lot of these authors who are writing on Royal Road, putting their stories up there, and then taking some down so they can publish them in KU. But the ones who, readers who really love it are buying their Patreon, they're doing whatever. So they're reading on Royal Road, they're reading ahead of the story. And the light novel represents the same sort of thing. So you can kind of get ahead of where the official story is.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, because I am completely unaware of that, what a light novel is, a Japanese light novel is.
So
Yeah.
back
That's
to
news for me,
Nick's
and I'm sure it's
question.
news for our audience.
So back
Yeah.
to Nick's question, what was everyone? Nathan has answered. What was your favorite GameLit? I'll go next just because it's easy. I've only read one so far, but War Hamster. War Master. I had to, Melissa.
War Master.
Thank you so much.
War Hamster is a person.
Yeah.
She's a funny medic. I've seen her stuff too.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your favorite, Melissa?
Okay, so for light novels, The Rising of the Shield Hero. That was my first. I actually saw that as anime, then proceeded to the light novels. I'm behind on the light novels, but that one is my favorite. And I have other series that I like too.
Your favorite GameLit, not or light RPG, not necessarily.
No. Okay, a light. It is in the form of a light novel, but it is GameLit. It's just that the light novel is. I distinguish between that and, say, a published novel, or something that you could buy on Amazon that's a traditional novel. This is just a different format. And so Rising of the Shield Hero is available as a light novel, and it's available as an anime. So that's my distinction.
What about you, Jana?
Oh, that's hard. So I'm Melissa's editor, and I really love War Master. I'm editing book 5, and it makes me happy. It fills my heart with joy, especially when I listen to people talking about that they're only reading book 2, and I'm like, just wait, it gets to the cool part soon. I mean, they're all cool parts, but you haven't seen this dungeon, and I have, so that's always fun. Also, Jay Barneson has a series called The Vanished, which is all about you have all of these people who mysteriously vanish here in the real world, and they all end up in this other place. And so it's that one's really fun. And then, like say, Jay Boyce has A Touch of Power is the name of the series, and that is YA lit RPG, and that's the one where it's a disabled girl who passes into the game, and I like that too. For that's one that eventually I'll have my daughter read, because it's well written, and it is kind of that fun thing to go, what an escape for somebody who's got those kind of issues. So there's three for the price of one. Ta-da!
All right, Heather.
All right, this one gets recommended in every LitRPG group ever, but Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. It's to me, it's a really good way to introduce people to the LitRPG genre, because it is hardcore LitRPG, but it's written in a way that is very accessible to people who are not familiar with the genre. And also the audiobook is top notch. Like, it's one of my favorite audiobooks of all time. And on top of that, it's hilarious, but as it goes on, you get these really, really unexpected bits of really heartfelt seriousness, and that contrast makes it really interesting. But yeah, Dungeon Crawler Carl. As far as light novels go, since I did recommend one that gets recommended all the time, there is a light novel called By the Grace of the Gods, and it is really, really simple. The main character, he's a Japanese salaryman who dies of stress and overwork, and he reappears in front of this unit of gods who are gonna reincarnate him in another world, and he's talking about his life and whatnot, and he basically makes comments like, well, I'm honestly surprised I made it that long. Other coworkers have died before me from overwork. And they basically go, this man has had a hard life. We're going to give him the most relaxed life ever. And so they reincarnate him like out in the middle of this forest, and he just has a good time like raising slimes. And the literal climax of the book is like he goes to a city and uses his slimes to clean toilets and saves the city from a pandemic by cleaning toilets with slimes. Like, it is so low key, but I felt so relaxed reading it the whole time. It's so good.
Okay, and I had one last question because you mentioned Royal Road, and I've read some stuff over on Wattpad, and I know there's Gum something that people buy from
Gumroad.
as well.
Gumroad.
And
Gumroad.
Ream.
Gumroad.
Ream. So do you think the tropes vary by where you're reading? Because I know some of the tropes in like the werewolf type stuff is different over on Wattpad than it would be if you're selling those books on Amazon.
Well, you get more erotica content off of Amazon because it gets dungeoned on Amazon. So if you're looking for really, really steamy, that you can sometimes see more frequently in other locations. But I don't know that that's necessarily that location determines tropes. Tropes are what people like about a story, and they're going to look for that wherever they are.
I have noticed that like some like the platform on Wattpad, for instance, it's got a lot of younger readers, so the tropes they're looking for are different than what a more mature person might be. So a lot of them, and some of them are even kids that are writing it, their idea of a dominant guy is just a jerk who should probably be in prison. But somehow that's romantic. Whereas, you know, maybe on Amazon, they're going to be like, yeah, this guy sucks. Next book, please. And I don't know if that's so much because of the medium or the age of the audience. Like,
yeah,
you know,
I think it has more to do with the demographic than conveyed.
Okay.
Yeah. You are going to get a different demographic on a site where you're paying for it versus a site where it's free.
That's true.
You do get different people that pop into that, and sometimes they're fantastic. Sometimes you do get that they're either young or they're looking for something specific that you go through there. So and you have to look at those different things. I like getting paid for my work, so I tend to stick with places where they have to pay me.
I like money.
My freebies are for newsletters and stuff like that, not for putting my entire work out for free.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we didn't ask the last religion question, then we're going to wrap this puppy up. So first, what is your, because it's going to air during the summer, what is your summer drink of choice, Nathan?
Rum and Coke.
Nice. Nick's is always booze related, so.
Oh, not all the time. I enjoy an Arnold Palmer.
Okay. What about you, Melissa? What do you drink when you're hot?
Fresh lime juice here in India. It's everywhere, and it's always delicious.
Is it just straight up lime juice? Like, is it?
It depends. It depends on where you get it. You can get it sugared. You can get it salty. You can get it just lime juice. You can get it sparkling. I prefer it sparkling with a little bit of sugar, and maybe some ice, which I get at my favorite restaurant. They know how to make it for me, and
I'm gonna have to
that's
try
my
this.
favorite.
I've never had lime juice before.
It's wonderful. So good.
Okay. Not the answer I expected, but we're going to go with it. All right, Jana.
My answer is never any different because I am a firm Dr. Pepper addict, and I drink it in the summer, and I drink it in the winter, and I drink it in the spring, and I drink it in the fall. That is my caffeine of choice, and I do like during the summer. I really do like a raspberry lemonade. A nice fruity lemonade is always nice in the heat. But I do always have my Dr. Pepper mug. It's true, and I'm okay with it.
Do you ever go like the generic Dr. Pepper, Big K or Circle K or whatever it is?
Dr. Thunder.
No, I thought we were friends, and I'm not sure that I can be friends with you anymore because that's
okay. I saw on TikTok that Dr. Pepper is nothing more than Coca-Cola and root beer put together.
La 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 la
Okay.
I know. I know. As That
You can have it
Dr.
when you
Pepper's
fry my
is
23
Texas.
flavors to my cold dead fingers.
I kind of want to mix
All
Atta
them
girl.
23,
now to
they're
see,
mine.
though. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I feel there's an experiment episode coming.
Because
Yeah.
What about Mr. Pibb? Will you settle for Mr. Pibb?
That root
No,
beer-
the dude dropped out. Didn't even get his degree.
Jeez. Well,
All right,
there's
all right,
only
all right.
Pepper that's the Dr. Pepper. Go away.
All right, Heather, what do
Mr.
you drink in
Pibb.
the summer?
Well, when I'm not drinking iced coffee, which I just drink all the time, I drink unholy amounts of lemonade during the summer.
Mm.
And it
Atta
doesn't
girl.
like, I don't care what flavor it is, as long as it's lemon and something, I will chug it.
I
Mm.
do love a strawberry lemonade.
I
Yeah.
recently, like, I've never had an iced coffee that I liked. And I went to
What?
Dunkin'. I was picking up something for my mom to have, some sugar after her PT. And I asked for a coffee, and I didn't even think to specify. And I'm hard of hearing one too many explosions near me. So I didn't catch when they asked if it was hot or iced, and I just said yes. So they gave me this iced coffee, and I'm like, well, I can't throw away coffee, so I'm just going to try it. I'm like, holy crap, this is good. So of course I can't pay $6 a coffee all the time, so I'm going to have to figure out how to make that myself now.
Yeah.
And I've
I'm
just
gonna
fallen
have
in
to
love
try
with
that
iced
now.
coffee.
Yeah.
You just put it in the fridge, man. That's it.
No, to get the flavor
Throw ice
right.
in it.
Get the flavor
Oh
right.
well,
So I'm gonna, because they mixed it up a little bit, but they have a cinnamon vanilla iced coffee that they sell,
Ooh.
which is
talk
really
to
good.
Stabby. She will give you the ins and outs of making home iced coffee.
I will have to just like give her what I ordered and be like, give me a recipe.
She probably already has it.
Mm.
Probably.
Like an iced caramel macchiato is divine.
They are. Those are delicious. They're not even that bad calorically unless you go crazy on the caramel drizzle.
Mm.
We just got a stationary bike. I don't care about calories anymore.
Why wouldn't you go crazy?
You're
on
not
the
gonna have a grasp on me.
part?
Yeah.
What was that, Jana?
The caramel's the best part. Why would you go easy on that?
I don't know. My favorite
Mm.
Drizzle the hell out of it.
I worked at Starbucks to pay for grad school, and my two favorite drinks are not on their menu anymore because the American Heart Association and the American Diabetes Federation said maybe no. But one was the caramel mocha, so they added caramel and the chocolate, and the other one was a maple latte that tasted like you were drinking liquid pancakes with coffee in it.
Sweet.
Oh.
It tastes like Canada.
It did. It tasted like Canada.
Funny thing is the Starbucks in the States is at Trente sizes, and you can't get those in Canada.
Oh, really?
Thanks, Trado.
So why can't is it because of the size? They just don't do it. They don't sell, or you're just not allowed.
It's probably the government. Everything's the government.
Okay, well we're not going
It's
to
like
get political. The only governments that matter are the ones in the books we love to read. And I'm just saying, who doesn't love a good
Trente
registrar?
is loud.
Mikey the murder hobo and the kill everybody. So we'll just go with that. Nathan, what are you writing right now?
I am currently working on 2 projects aside from all the anthologies that JR puts out. I have one is I call it my Hellcat series. It's a novella series about bounty hunters. John Wick, Firefly, Cowboy Bebop took the best bits of it.
Mm.
Nice.
And then the other one I'm working on, I don't have a name yet. I need one. It is, I call it my medieval mecha series, which is basically I took a mecha, threw it into a fantasy setting, and they get to bash other people in. So,
Yes,
Cool.
best genre.
working on
All
book 2.
right.
All right,
Nice.
and going round robin, Melissa, what are you writing right now?
I am, when I'm writing, which is very rarely these days, thank you, day job, but I am writing book 7 of the War Master series. And editing some of the others and getting ready for an audiobook of book 4 and just basically doing a lot of writing related things.
Okay. You got any great stabby battles going on?
Yes, actually they are in the dungeon, which is called the Ivory Palace. And this book is inspired by my life here in India. So it is all Indian themed. There may or may not be Rakshasa involved. And it was they're about to encounter a battle between the demons and the weresharks. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And you thought you were safe from shark menaces on land.
I know.
All right. Do I need to send your day job a strongly worded letter so you can write some more?
Oh, it'll be end of this week. I am back to writing. It'll be great.
I'm just saying, I know a guy who knows a guy. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you should. You totally should. Yeah.
All right. Outstanding. Jana, what are you writing right now? Obviously, you're editing stuff, but what are you writing that's yours?
Yes, what I'm writing, it's mine. By the time this airs, I will probably be working on an urban fantasy again. I have an urban fantasy series that I started a good while ago, and then life got crazy, and it's percolating in the back of my brain that I need to get back and finish that. So by this time, I should be working on Fallen Leaves, and I'm working on a LitRPG with you, where we do bad things to cavalry officers.
They had it coming. I'm just saying, had it coming.
It's true. He asked for it. So
yeah, they're
those
practically
two
infantry.
things at that point.
Yeah, just ask them. And the cool thing is we had to pick a world they were going to, so we picked Celtic theme inspired, just because it was a fun excuse to research. And it all started with a joke from Stabby, and she sent me this not a meme, it's like a video thingy on Instagram, and it's like, oh, mermaids, and it starts with Ariel, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of cute. She's gonna be all girly. Stabby is. And then the girl that's making the video is like, no. And then all of a sudden it goes to all the horror interpretations of what a mermaid is from all the mythos. And she's like, this is why I like mermaids. And I'm like, this is dark, evil, and twisted. And when they got to the Celtic one, I was like, I've got to research this. And so theoretically, this is for the book, but mostly it's an excuse to research stuff I want to learn about.
That's true.
And it's all Stabby's fault.
Use it in the book too.
It's all Stabby's fault. All right, Heather, what are you writing right now?
Well, under my Edie Sky pen name, I am so close to finishing the final edit on Monster Girl Tamer, which is my newest series. It's actually a spicy branch of the Monster Punk Horizon series, so I'm co-authoring it with myself so that the two overlap. But it's a LitRPG harem fantasy. Basically, the main character gets isekai'd to a world of monster hunters, and there are crazy monster girls running about destroying things, and he has to tame them.
Wow.
I'm just imagining these staff meetings.
I mean, it's hot girls and monster hunters. For that genre, that's all readers need to know.
So I'm just picturing these staff meetings where you're like planning your book with yourself and you're arguing with yourself. This would be comical. You should film this.
Yes, I actually should.
You could make a bit of this on your YouTube. Like you could just go back and forth with like a different hat or something. I don't know. And you could argue with yourself.
My sunglasses that I can use.
There you go.
There you go. It would be hilarious. I would pay to just watch that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
All right. And I am on about 45,000 words into book 2 of my Cursed Brigade trilogy, finishing what James and I were working on. I finished up some of the short story contracts we had opened. I don't know if they'll get published because I don't know what happened to the some of the publishers we were working with, but we gave our word that we'd finish them. So I finished them, and now it's off to the races to get this trilogy done. Hopefully get some money coming into his family. And then I am editing a series that I wrote years ago that the publisher is finally getting it ready. Sometimes even even Indie Pub can be slow sometimes when you're working with presses. But it'll be coming out this summer. Like I said, this is just an editing pass, but that's what I'm working on. And in the background, if I can hit my daily word counts, my present to myself is to write this GameLit. And maybe we could do what Melissa did and be like working on book 9 while book 1 publishes. I'm not counting, but it could.
No, I'm in favor of that. Yeah.
Me too.
I'm just in favor of books that people buy again. That would be nice. Money is good. I have
Money
a
is
home
nice.
that I want to buy, and land isn't free, unfortunately. All right. How can listeners or readers or viewers, all the peoples that are stalking us, how can they find you, Nathan?
Sorry, I have to unmute. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and my website, mythvideo.com.
And they will be in the show notes. All right, Melissa, where can they find you on the interwebs?
All right. My website is melissamcshanewrites.com. You can find me there. There's a contact form if you want to talk to me personally. And I'm also on Facebook and on X/Twitter. I'm not going to get used to that anytime soon. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's it.
So, but be warned, she can sometimes be mean when you message her because I've done that. And she's like, shouldn't you be writing, JR? I'm like, ooh.
It's just you. You're the only
Oh,
one who
just-
gets that.
just me,
Everybody
just
else
me.
gets
Okay,
one.
okay.
It's just you. You're special.
All right,
That's
Jana,
not
where
mean,
can we
that's
find
encouragement.
where can we find the many voices and personalities that are you and you are they?
Oh, all over the place. Most Generate or Generate author on all the socials are me. Otherwise, you can come on over to opalkingdompress.com and you can find me on Amazon under Generate and find all of the books and the goodness there.
Outstanding. And where can they find you? The multiple personalities of HP Hollow and Edie Sky.
Well, my HP Hollow stuff can be found on hollowwriting.com. My Edie Sky stuff can be found on ediesky.com. As for social media, I am on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. I forgot. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram as either Hollow Writing or Edie Sky author, whichever you please. So
Nice. Nice.
and on Amazon, of course.
All right. And you can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks. That one's managed by Stabby Stab. So if you want to say hi to her over there, we uploaded our first video recently over there. A listener of the show made a plaque that's our logo on it to hang up. And so we did the unboxing because Stabby found out her name was included and she didn't know that. So she got all emotional. And she thought we were plotting against her, but we were just trying to give her a present.
She did. She like broke out the knives and everything. She's like, "You plotting against me, Nick?" I'm like, "No, I don't." It's a surprise. It's not plotting. I mean, it's plotting, but
Different.
it's a surprise. Like we're not
Nick-
plotting against you. Like it's a
Right.
benefit. Like you're
I
about
like
to
it.
get uncommon loot. You know.
Nick didn't warn me this about her, like that she was basically like FBI level, CIA level stalker. So she's like asking me 20 questions about what the package is. And I think I might have given it away, but I'm like, nobody warned me to be prepared for this. I didn't have
She
my
stalked me before we physically met when we were like talking in the talking phase, and she knew my favorite color before I had met her. She's like, "So I understand that your favorite color is blue," and I'm like, "This should be a red flag, but you're really hot, so I'm gonna let it go."
I'm just saying this could have ended up one of two ways. And one, he ends up in a hotel
Yeah.
room missing his kidneys.
Either I end up in a bathtub full of ice, or I end up happily ever after. Luckily, happily ever after is what's going on right now.
That's good.
Yeah, luckily for you, it could have gone either way. But all right, you can find us on our Twitters. We have the email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only. We have the Facebook group and Facebook page. And more importantly, we have Madam Stabby Stab over here on Instagram, Twitter, and email. Oh, deep breath. All right. We have our website at anchor.fm/blasters.blades. That might not be accurate by the time this airs. So check the link tree. We will update it. I am in the process of fighting with Spotify to get them to port it over. They don't like me. They keep telling me I'm not me, even though I tell them I'm me. I don't know what's going on. It's giving me a complex. I'm starting to think I have multiple personalities at this rate.
Have you tried giving them an accent? Maybe that'll work.
You might be onto something. All right. And so you could support us over there for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on, or you can support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink until it pours out of their eyeballs, and then they will replace it with that weirdness that Nick was talking about, Arnold Palmer's, and I don't know what the hell he did to anybody, but apparently they're drinking his blood now.
Ew.
If you put vodka in it, the Arnold Palmer becomes a Phil Mickelson.
Clearly, I am not cultured enough. I stuck to beer and rum and Coke. I'm a man of simple tastes.
I got you, boo. I got you.
Oh, screwdrivers too. I know about a screwdriver. I drank those too. But
You know what a mojito is too.
thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thanks everyone for coming on. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully they let me end the show this time once they kept us